Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News with me, Keturah King. Now, my first guest, Ivie Omoregie, is an astute lawyer with many years' experience. After deciding to move back to her home country of Nigeria for 1 year, 7 years later, her passion has kept her in place and has led her to work at some of the top law firms in the country. With a keen interest in projects within the sub-Saharan African region, she's also an active member of the Nigerian Bar Association, and she possesses a vast wealth of knowledge within the judicial scope of Nigeria that she'll be sharing with us today. And we'll be taking a look at a politically charged story that has recently come to light from the continent. Welcome to the show, Ivie.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Now, I've been so excited to speak with you because you get to give us a legal look at what's going on. But before we delve into the stories of what's been going on across the continent, tell me about how you decided to get involved in law.
It's something that I'd always wanted to be involved in. So as a child growing up, watching Ally McBeal and watching television, I just wanted to be involved. Then the older I got, the more I felt compelled to do something about helping people's situations. So for me, it came from that, and it's something I just love doing. I really enjoy my job. I enjoy the various aspects of law. So that's why I'm here, yeah.
Wow. Now, if you were to look at your childhood, what personal events would you say shaped you the most and this passion for law?
I think growing up in South London, you see injustices being levied out on a daily basis, and you just want to do something to help. So you also want to know your rights, which is why now I'm very, very vocal about letting the layman know their rights. I feel like sometimes you can be taken advantage of if you don't know what you're doing.
Absolutely.
And certain things do not happen in certain socioeconomic groups because they know their rights. So, so just wanting to help someone, seeing low-income families being taken advantage of, and it's something that's quite dear to my heart.
Right. So you talked about, looking at these social injustices and that spurring you on. And I know that you also dealt in immigration law at one time as well. Talk to me about that.
Immigration in England is something that it's peculiar. It's something that you have to help people with, but at the same time, I understood why certain policies were in place with regards to the British government. But you just have to try your best to get the best result. But immigration in England, you see a lot of families, like really, really low-income families, impoverished families from different jurisdictions, not just Africans. We've dealt with Indians, we've dealt with Chinese people trying to get a better future for their family. But at the same time, the British system has, over the years, became a lot more stringent in regards to who they allowed in the country. So immigration is a peculiar one. It's a peculiar one because you see the sad side to it, especially when you're facing a client that is getting deported and you are the one that has to break the news that there's literally nothing that can be done to help their case. A lot of people just want a better future for their families. So, yeah.
That's, wow, very touching. So speaking about assisting the layman and letting them know their rights, we are going to delve into, during our take, we're going to look at that with President Buhari and focus it on Nigeria. But what would you say you love the most about being a lawyer?
I think being a lawyer gives you backstage access to some of the most celebrated and most controversial things in our environment. Being a lawyer gives you an intricate understanding of things. So that's why I have a lot of people that maybe they went to law school but they chose not to practice. I used to wonder, why would you do that? But now I appreciate that. It just gives you a different understanding, so you can't be bamboozled. And you can't be led astray, or you shouldn't be able to be led astray. But I think I like the fact that being a lawyer, it trains your mind. You think differently. Like the people say, you think like a lawyer. So there are some things that maybe a non-lawyer might not appreciate in a circumstance that a lawyer has analysed and put the gaps together.
Right.
Yeah.
So you moved to Nigeria and you wanted to move here for 1 year.
Yeah.
What's the story behind staying here for 7?
I swear, my parents, when I first wanted to move back, my parents were a bit, because I grew up in the UK, my parents live in the UK, and they were a bit apprehensive. But I came back and I just saw that Africa is the way forward. I believe Africa is the way forward. I believe Nigeria is my country, so there's no window or there's no roof to the opportunities available for me in this country. I am someone that I was born and raised in the UK, but at all points in my time there, I appreciated that England is not my country. And I just firmly believe that if you want to excel, you can't really do so in another man's country. So which is why I came back for a year. I didn't know what to expect. I came back, I got my foot in the door, and I just saw that there's a lot of hope and light in this country. And I believe in Africa. Yeah. I believe in Nigeria. I believe we have our issues. But then if we put our heads together and work together, there is definitely a lot of light at the end of the tunnel.
Wow. And speaking about your belief for Nigeria, what sort of impact are you looking to make in the country and across Africa in general?
I believe that the fact that I was not trained or born and raised in Nigeria, I come with a different mindset. And I see things differently. Some people would say corruption is entrenched in our system, and from a young age, a lot of people are used to it. It's just a way of life for them. But I wasn't raised in Nigeria, so for me, corruption is not a way of life. It's something that's quite peculiar. And just coming with a different mindset, I believe the Western world are able to achieve the success they have achieved because they have certain institutions in place. So me being raised in London, I grew up with these institutions. So therefore, it's easy for me to implement them in what I do. Wherever I go, I will implement what I know. And hopefully, like bit by bit, if we all come together, we will get the desired results.
It's interesting that you spoke about corruption in Nigeria, rather, because the National Bureau of Statistics actually just yesterday released a survey to say, well, it's our first ever corruption survey. Can you believe that in the first instance?
I swear.
We haven't had any other one, but we'll take that as it comes. Now, the survey says, for the most part, it's not good. So it says nearly a third of Nigerian adults who had had contact with local public officials in the period under review reported cases where bribes were solicited or paid to a public official. On average, Nigerians pay 6 bribes per year, or 1 every 2 months. The NBS estimates that the total amount of bribes paid to public officials amounts to $4.6 billion in purchasing power parity terms, and that's the equivalent of 39% of the country's federal and state budgets for education last year. What do you make of those figures?
First of all, I would always question on what basis the figures were achieved.
Right.
From how do they get those figures? Is it plucked out of the air? I'm sure people that are giving bribes are not going to be disclosing it or discussing it.
But it's a census, it's a survey that's been carried out by the National Bureau of Statistics. So this is, it's authoritative. We have this under authoritative evidence. So we do have to believe the figures.
Okay, I read about that, and it said that some people, like the percentage that was quoted, either they paid a bribe or they received a bribe. And I think it's two different spectrums.
So we can see the figures on screen now. We can see that the adults mostly paid bribes to police, 46.4%, with prosecutors, judges, tax officers, customs officials, and public utilities officers following after that. Now, a prosecutor is what you do. Have you ever been solicited for a bribe?
I have not. Unfortunately, I have not. But it's interesting that the prosecutors and judges are quite high up.
Yes.
But then what comes to my mind is that even in Nigeria, when we want to prosecute a minister or a governor, it tends to be done abroad and not in Nigeria.
Do you think so?
So that's the reality of the Nigeria that we face.
And this is because we are looking at such a high bribery case, you think?
Again, I question the basis of these statistics because I believe in Nigeria we have an issue when it comes to legitimate statistics. But then the reality of it is most times when a governor is prosecuted, when a minister is prosecuted or under serious investigation, it is not done in the country.
Right.
So there must be an issue somewhere. And it's unfortunate. I have actually been in court and I've seen some judges give some interesting verdicts or rulings.
Really?
And you just wonder to yourself, like, is this for real? But at the same time, we do have a lot of upstanding judges that are dedicated and they do their job meticulously. And I think it's a few bad eggs that are spoiling it for the majority of them. And also, in reality, we've seen EFCC covering large sums of money, and none of it has actually belonged to any judge or prosecutor.
Yes.
So...
But with regards to what you're saying, I mean, I do take it on board, but where do you see us going from here? Because if prosecutors and judges are receiving the second and third largest amounts of bribes in the country, and this is amounting to what, just short of $36 million? Where do we go from here?
Okay, one thing I know is that once you have identified a problem, right, then you can now take the necessary steps to rectify the situation.
Absolutely.
So now that we have identified or seemingly identified that there is an issue with our judiciary system, I think it will make judges a bit more cautious in their endeavours and in their actions. Obviously, last year, October, we saw the raids that were conducted on several judges.
Yes.
I think a lot of judges were shaken by that action. And then this now, it's further drawing light to the fact that we have a serious problem here. So I believe that the fact that we're discussing it now is making it a poignant issue in our society right now. And hopefully the right actions will be taken and the necessary, because amongst themselves, they know the bad eggs.
Right.
So maybe by us discussing it and shedding more light on it, those bad eggs can be isolated. And I feel once they are isolated, they are contained so that the good eggs can flourish, because there are majority good eggs. You understand?
I do. Interesting. Okay. So in terms of you, where do we see you going from here in your legal profession?
Okay, recently I just launched my own firm, which is Sky Advisory, and then we specialize in corporate commercial advisory and mediation. And I also write. I am a legal writer. So I'm just trying to do my best. I don't really have a game plan. I tend to take every day that comes because you just never really know. But then my aim is to just share the knowledge. I feel like we don't have free legal information in Nigeria. A lot of lawyers or a lot of people believe lawyers are about money and not realizing that there are many lawyers out there that would assist free of charge. So I feel that there's a massive need in Nigeria right now to just help.
So you're looking to start our first pro bono network?
Hopefully. It's something that I have seriously considered. It's something that's dear to my heart, so yeah.
Amazing stuff. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Ivie. We will see you later on in the show for Our Take.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Insightful time spent there with Ivie Omoregie, but it's time now for a short break on the morning show. Stay tuned, as when we return, we'll be speaking to a passionately political producer and filmmaker. Don't go away.